If you would see the very heart of England, the green and pleasant land whose fertile acres have inspired poets and bred men of action, go to the Midlands. Here is Shakespeare's England, and there are parts of it that have seen little change since his time. For these Midland people, while moving with the times, have kept the Shakespearean tradition very much alive. Another tradition has lived on and flourished, one that was already old when Shakespeare was a boy. The tradition of craftsmanship, of doing a job well and taking a pride in it. Some of the older crafts are dying out, but for every one that passes into disuse, 100 new skills are born. The tools and methods change, the vital spirit lives on, increases and builds new empires of technical achievement, rising up out of the green fields. One is here at Solihull, between industrial Birmingham and the green pastures of Warwickshire. Its subjects are the craftsmen who make Rover cars. To trace the Rover story back to its beginning, we must go to Coventry. 80 years ago or more, James Starley was making improvements on the bicycle, the terrifying penny farthing. The safety bicycle, perfected by his nephew J.K. Starley, who took over the business in 1881, quickly replaced the old-style machine. The comfortable, improved bicycle opened up such a vista of travel that it was suitably named the Rover. With the sport made safe even for the fair sex, the bicycle became a symbol of dashing emancipation. Those were the days when life was really speeding up. The enormous popularity of the bicycle was merely to set the scene for another innovation, the motor car. In 1904, the Rover Company produced its first cars. They were greeted with enthusiasm. A journalist wrote of a sweetly running car free from harassing peculiarities. People of fashion and the world of style found its lines had a graciousness that fitted in well with the tenor of life. Meanwhile, the pace of motors was speeding up to alarming proportions. The Rover had 8 horsepower, 1 cylinder, and 2 years later, Thomas Jefferson drove one of these remarkable vehicles from Coventry to Constantinople, over roads scarcely worthy of the name, through country that few modern drivers would care to risk. Up to now, the Rover Company had not played a great part in motor racing, but in 1907, a car was entered for the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy. Despite torrential rain, the sturdy Rover forged ahead and won the event. The 1909 Rover showed improvements on earlier models and did much to establish the company's reputation for solid engineering. Between 1910 and 1920, despite the restrictions on motoring imposed by the First World War, the Rover Company had some notable successes in hill climbs and reliability trials, often with the famous Rover motorcycle. C.T. Newsom captained the successful team that won the Isle of Man Team Prize in 1913 and made the fastest time of the day at Caerphilly Hill Climb in the same year. In the optimistic years following the First World War, this Rover car was a model of executive decorum. And while formality lingered on in the older institutions and events, this doctor's car was typical of the more breezy approach to professional life and motoring. It was in this period that the sea-roving Viking mascot was adopted to symbolize the name Rover, inherited from bicycling days. The 1924 model is still remembered in motoring circles for its simplicity, style, and advanced engine design. In the 1930s, life suddenly began to be very real, very earnest, and very competitive. The rapidly diminishing number of manufacturing firms in this country vied with each other in cutting prices. The nation's leaders called for economy. The Rover Company took a bold step. Considering that high quality was the soundest economy, it withdrew from the cutthroat race and decided to concentrate on a car designed and built to the most exacting standards. In the 9 years that followed, competition eliminated all but a small number of motor manufacturers. The Rover policy was justified. The results of this continuing policy are apparent today, when Rover cars of the 1930s, nursed by their owners with all the loving care that such a car commands, are still in heavy demand. The war came, and with it a new word, to Coventry. The Rover Company's Coventry works, marked as a top priority on the Luftwaffe's operational maps, were not spared. Only one thing was not destroyed in that night of baptism by fire, the will to win. The Rover Company made a fighting comeback. In a shadow factory at Solihull and elsewhere, it started making Meteor engines for the Cromwell tank. Hercules and Lysander aircraft were also to be a part of the company's contribution to the war effort. The jet aircraft engine was to provide another outlet for the company's engineering skill and experience, converting a brilliant dream into a piece of practical engineering called for new materials, new methods, new techniques. A few years after the war, the Rover Company produced the Land Rover, most versatile wheeled vehicle ever made. This complete departure from routine car manufacture surprised the world. Meanwhile, one of the first British cars with a post-war look was the 1950 Rover, additional proof that the company was marching with, or even ahead of, the times. And looking ahead of the times was another project at Solihull, the gas turbine engine that one day is going to revolutionize internal combustion. With Jet 1, the original model, now in the Science Museum, research is forging ahead. And this base unit is used for development, a mobile test bed. A new conception and a new form of motoring are seen in T3, the gas turbine prototype car. Only a beginning, it is already accepted as the pattern for motoring in the years ahead. But behind this experiment was a flow of normal Rover cars. In the post-war years, to own a Rover became more and more a desirable objective, and production increased with demand. Once a driver had owned a Rover, it raised his appreciation of what pleasure and satisfaction such a good car could give. Appreciates progress and new conception. And now, with all that had been learned in 60 years, the Rover Company began developing a new car to meet the needs of wider markets. The 3-litre, bigger, longer, lower than other Rover cars, more roomy and more powerful.